Welcome back. We're talking about Islam and why Muslim extremists are targeting the United States with our two guests, Corey Saylor and Tarek Fatah. Corey, let me start with you this time. Do you believe that the Islamic faith has been hijacked? And if so, who's doing the hijacking?
Well, certainly in the media, the violent extremists are given far more of a voice than other elements of the faith. So if it's a crazy guy in a cave in Afghanistan waving a sword yelling death to America, he gets news coverage. If you have some positive event going on, it's just you and the other people participating in it. But I really do need to transition back to the point that the other guest made just before the break. The notion racism is a human problem. I don't think anyone denies that. But the notion that Islam is somehow to blame for racism is a complete fallacy. I mean, here in the United States, the Constitution, as originally written, counted black people as 3/5 of a human being. And they were kept as slaves for quite some time. It still exists within our society. So I think what we need to look at is what within our faiths teaches us to look past those differences. In Islam, we're taught that we were made into different tribes so that we might come to know each other. So is there problems with racism among humans trying to implement Islam at times? Yes. Among humans trying to implement democracy? Yes. Is it something we can all work together to overcome? Absolutely, and we should.
Right, Tarek, is Islam responsible for racism in the world today?
I didn't say that, and that's my problem with people putting words in other people's mouth. This is simply unfair and untenable. What I'm suggesting to you is that in the Middle East, the heartland of Islam, and where most Muslims in the United States come from, which is Pakistan and the Arab world, this is predominant. Salaries are paid based on skin colors. Citizenship is based on what your skin color is. It's indoctrinated into the written word, and it's not discussed because there's a general agreement. We won't touch this. And the fact remains that there are American Muslim organizations who have received funding from Saudi sources. We also know on record that there are American Muslim organizations that have been unindicted co-conspirators in the Texas terror trial. We know who these people are. We know how the MSAs were organized in the 60s and what their role was. Please, let us be honest with ourselves. If we can't allow Ayaan Hirsi Ali to speak in Brandeis University, then certainly you are incapable of debating with ex-Muslims and engaging them in a way where they have stood up and said that I went through FMG and therefore I'm out of Islam. And my point is, we need to talk to these people rather than labeling them as apostates and chasing them out of universities. This is not freedom of speech or freedom of expression. This is typical Arab authoritarianism being introduced into the United States of America.
Okay, let me give Corey a chance to respond to that. Let me ask you first, is your organization sponsored in any way by Saudi Arabia?
No.
Okay, go ahead.
So
I didn't say that.
No, that was a separate question from me. I didn't say, I wasn't implying that you said that.
So just as a reminder, I'm not the federal government. I absolutely have no ability to interfere in anybody's First Amendment right to say whatever. I have no police power. I have nothing. CARE as an institution has a voice like other voices in this society, and we choose to exercise that voice at times. So recently, a woman named Ayaan Hirsi Ali, who has suffered tremendously, and that suffering deserves to be recognized, was to be given an award at Brandeis University. We questioned the award. She has the right to say what she wants to say, when she wants to say it. But when someone says that we're at war with Islam and calls for the US Constitution to be changed to allow for discrimination against Muslims, that person, in my mind, should not be honored by an American university. Free speech? Absolutely. Legitimizing platform of a university? Absolutely not.
Okay.
How does it matter to you what Brandeis does? You bullied so many people out. You charge
Once again,
people
it's a free
with
society. We have the right to say what we want to. Right now, the bullying is you yelling over me. I'm just making basic logical points.
You're not making logical points. You are suggesting that you have no connections with the Middle East, yet CARE has had inspiration and funding from Saudi Arabia. Prince, I mean, early on in your creation, you had it.
So,
You've been
okay,
unindicted
let me come out. We
co-conspirator
got-
in
well,
a terror trial.
Yeah, I just asked Corey about that.
Right.
He said he doesn't get any funding from
We
Saudi
did,
Arabia.
we did get money from Walid bin Talal, who actually owns the parent company of Fox News. So if you're going to hold me to
Why
taking
don't
money
you
from
say
him,
that?
you got to hold Fox
That's
News.
his
Okay,
business.
well, let me ask you-
You did get money from a Saudi prince. Why don't you say that? Why do you have to say that he owns
I think I
Fox
just did.
News?
Yeah,
I
Tarek,
don't say that.
let me ask you, Tarek, something you've said about the role of Saudi
Yes.
Arabia and Qatar in the Middle East, especially in the civil war that is being fought in Syria. You said that they are doing this with a nod from the United States and the United Kingdom, and it's nothing short of a crime against humanity. Are you saying...
Absolutely.
Right. Are you saying that... What about Assad? You know, isn't he a dictator?
Assad should have been removed long time ago. That's not the issue. The United States of America and the Islamic organizations that exist in America, which have their connections both in the Bush administration through Grover Norquist and right now with Huma Abedin and the others, have their influences with Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia today is the world's #1 sponsor of international terrorism. Saudi Arabia should have been facing sanctions for what it has committed in Syria. Of tens of thousands of people died. Both Mr. Assad and the Saudis have been pals of the American White House.
Well, we know,
That's
Tarek,
clearly
that one of the reasons that that's not happening is because Saudi Arabia also happens to have an awful lot of oil. Corey, we have a little time left, and I want to ask you about this. To what extent is there a conscious effort in the United States to undermine Islam? For instance, there was an effort at one stage to prevent Muslims from standing for public office, which is actually a violation of the US Constitution. And you had pointed out at one time that there's something like 37 groups in the United States with access to
$119 million over a period of 4 years.
dollars involved in spreading anti-Muslim propaganda.
So there is a conscious effort to otherize American Muslims. What you're talking about in terms of getting there was a poll done by Time magazine in 2010 in which about a third of respondents said Muslims shouldn't be allowed to run for president, which in my book puts us in the excellent position of being able to uphold the Constitution, because we have to remind people that Article 6 of the Constitution says there is no religious test for public office. It doesn't matter what your faith is, it matters who's the right candidate. The main thing that we have to remember, though, is that while Muslims are the target of bigotry today, it will be somebody else tomorrow. It was Japanese Americans in the past, it's been Jews, it's been Catholics, it's been Mormons. Each in turn have stood up and defended themselves and American ideals, and I think America's a better place for that. So that's what we know.
Yeah, and that, gentlemen, is where we're going to have to leave it. Tarek Fatah in Toronto, Corey Saylor here with me in Washington. Thank you for joining us. And that is it for this edition of The Heat. We'd love to hear from you, so please send us your questions, comments, and story ideas to theheat@cctv-america.com. Once again, that's theheat@cctv-america.com. I'm Anand Naidoo in Washington, D.C. Thanks for being with us.